flashy headlines to really understand the actual mechanics behind major global events, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking a highly complex, totally unprecedented situation that just recently unfolded in Eastern Europe. We're going to be looking at the anatomy of a strike, specifically the drone incident in the Romanian city of Galati, and the very real, very complicated dilemma it's created for NATO. We have a lot of fascinating ground to cover today, and we're going to rely on the hard data, expert analysis, and on-the-ground reporting to piece together exactly what happened. Now, you might be thinking, fragments of Russian drones have fallen on Romanian territory plenty of times before during the ongoing conflict in neighboring Ukraine. And you'd be right. But, as the reports highlight, this incident completely breaks a significant geopolitical threshold. To quote the reporting directly, this is the first time citizens of the NATO member state have been hurt. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the hard facts of what actually occurred on the ground.
Section 1. The Galati drone strike.
To really grasp the wider geopolitical ripples, we first need to zoom in on the exact sequence of events in Galati. It's a major Romanian port city sitting right on the river Danube, very close to the borders of both Moldova and Ukraine. Let's look at the sheer speed at which this whole thing unfolded. According to official press statements, Romanian radar systems were actively tracking an incoming threat, which prompted two U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets, which were on quick reaction alert, to launch at 1:20 a.m. By roughly 2 a.m., the drone was officially detected entering Romanian airspace. And then, incredibly fast, we're talking within just 4 minutes of that official detection by security forces, at exactly 2:04 a.m., an armed drone slammed right into a building in Galati. And this brilliantly illustrates a key piece of the puzzle: 18 kilometers. That is the exact distance from the strike site in Galati to the absolute nearest potential Ukrainian target. Now, the Ukrainian ports of Reni and Izmail, just on the other side of the border, have been pretty regular targets for strikes on cargo and grain infrastructure, but an 18-kilometer gap, that strongly suggests to Romanian military analysts that this wasn't just some stray piece of debris tumbling out of the sky. It raises some really serious questions about the drone's actual flight path.
We also need to look at the human impact here. When that drone struck, it didn't hit an empty field. It hit the top level of a 10-story apartment block, causing a massive explosion and fire. Emergency systems were instantly triggered, resulting in the evacuation of about 70 people. 2 citizens, a 53-year-old woman and our 14-year-old son, were injured. Medics confirmed they were quickly taken to hospitals and are thankfully safe, though they're remaining under careful medical supervision for now. And right now, military experts and police are physically on the ground, gathering up fragments of what was carrying military equipment and explosives.
Section 2. The geopolitical fallout. An armed military drone exploding in a populated city of a NATO member state is, as journalists have reported, quite literally the most serious incident to happen in Romania since the large-scale invasion of Ukraine began over 4 years ago. The diplomatic ripples? Absolutely immediate. However, listen closely to how leaders are actively framing this. This is a direct quote from the Romanian deputy head of the armed forces. This does not constitute an attack on Romania, but it's the consequence of an attack on neighboring Ukraine. By defining it as a consequence rather than a direct attack, officials are clearly trying to manage the narrative here and avoid any kind of rapid, uncontrollable escalation of tensions. But that doesn't mean there hasn't been a strong diplomatic response. Not at all. Bucharest officially accused Moscow of a serious and irresponsible escalation. The Russian ambassador was summoned, and sure, while that's happened before, there is unofficial talk in Romania this time around of demanding a much stronger response, maybe even expulsion, though that would require some pretty intense consultation with their allies. Meanwhile, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis immediately convened the Supreme Defense Council, and right at the highest level of the alliance, NATO's Mark Rutte reached out to assure absolute solidarity with Romania.
Section 3. The Article 5 question.
Whenever any kind of military incident happens inside NATO territory, this is immediately the biggest question on everyone's mind. What actually triggers the alliance's mutual protection clauses? So the crucial point is the specific language of the treaty itself. Article 5 is NATO's collective self-defense clause, operating on that famous principle that an attack on one member is an attack on all. However, as military analysts are quick to point out, there is an incredibly important caveat in how that language is applied in the real world. It generally requires a sustained attack.
And because of that specific caveat, a one-off wouldn't necessarily invoke Article 5. Based on what we've seen so far, military experts and analysts are currently viewing this strike in Galati as a one-off event. By understanding this specific technical threshold for collective defense, we can kind of keep the potentially scary geopolitical realities completely grounded in fact. It perfectly explains why a measured diplomatic response is taking precedence right now over any immediate military retaliation. Section 4, the F-16 intercept dilemma. Which brings us to a major tactical mystery. Think about it. If the official press statements say Romanian radars were actively tracking this incoming drone and 2 advanced F-16 fighter jets were literally airborne, carrying air-to-air missiles, why didn't they just shoot it down before it hit the apartment building? It seems like a super simple solution, right? Well, the reality of aerial interception is far, far more complex than that.
Let's move to and see how this builds. To truly understand this, we need to compare the aircraft involved. On one side, we have an advanced, high-speed F-16 fighter jet. On the other side, we have these one-way attack drones. Specifically, we're talking about the Garand 2, which is effectively a direct blueprint of the Iranian Shahed 136 drone that we've seen flying around in Persian Gulf airspace.
So here is exactly why the F-16 didn't simply blow it out of the sky. First off, these drones fly incredibly low, sometimes down to just 50 feet off the deck. If you shoot down an explosive drone over a built-up populated city like Galati, the falling debris creates massive, immediate risks for the 200,000 citizens living right below. Second, there's a huge speed envelope mismatch. These drones cruise along at around 120 miles per hour. An F-16 jet is literally not designed to fly that slowly. To intercept it, the jet would have to fly incredibly slow and get dangerously close to the drone. Third, and honestly perhaps most fascinating, is the physical vulnerability of the fighter jet itself. The F-16 has this huge air intake right on the bottom of the aircraft. If it gets too close and shoots the drone, that intake is going to vacuum up all the resulting explosive debris, which could easily destroy the multi-million-dollar jet in the process. So shooting it down? Yeah, it's definitely not an easy or safe procedure.
Section 5, the electronic warfare theory. So if it wasn't shot down and it ended up hitting 18 kilometers away from the nearest target, how on earth did this Garand 2 drone end up so far off course in the first place? To understand this, we've got to look at the sheer scale of the drone conflict happening right now. 6,500. That is the number of these one-way attack drones that were deployed against Ukraine in the month of April alone. That is a massive, relentless volume of attacks, and it's highly likely this specific drone was launched from the geography of Crimea. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Ukraine has responded to that overwhelming volume. They have actually become incredibly adept at counter-threat technology. They've developed counter-uncrewed aerial systems that are successfully taking out between 89% and 93% of the drones entering their airspace. I mean, that is a completely staggering success rate.
And how exactly do they achieve that? Aside from traditional kinetic shootdowns, a huge part of it comes down to electronic warfare, specifically jamming and spoofing. Here's how that works on a really basic level. Step 1, Ukrainian defenses deploy electromagnetic waves into the atmosphere across the targeted area. Step 2, those waves cause massive electromagnetic interference, completely jamming the drone's internal guidance systems. And step 3, because the drone is now effectively blinded or totally confused, it gets pushed completely off its intended target. Military analysts are actively questioning right now if this highly successful jamming strategy might have accidentally pushed this specific drone way off its course, sending it straight into Romanian airspace and right into that apartment block.
Which leaves us with this final profound question to consider today. Was this just a tragic accident? A stray drone simply pushed wildly off course by the dense, invisible electromagnetic interference of modern warfare? Or, as some Romanian military analysts are currently wondering, was this a deliberate, calculated test by Russia? A way to see exactly how NATO's defense capabilities operate in real time and whether they actually have the political will to invoke Article 5. The evidence leaves us all looking for answers as these investigations continue. I really hope this explainer helped you map out the facts, the technology, and the massive geopolitical stakes at play here. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep asking great questions, and I will absolutely see you in the next one.